welcome back to the Primal Gal channel. I have my sister Aubrey with me today, and she's gonna show us how to start a sourdough starter and how to maintain it and take care of it. First, we'll go over what sourdough is. Sourdough is you're fermenting your flour and water, and what's fermenting it is the natural yeast and bacteria. So the yeast that you usually buy at the store, that's called instant yeast or commercial yeast, that's usually grown on off of sugar. They use that in most conventional breads and rolls and pizza doughs, that kind of stuff. And essentially sourdough is that. It's like yeast, but it's a natural yeast. So sourdough is a natural form of that instant yeast. So it's taking place of that. Yes, it's more of a process, but the health benefits outweigh that for me. It makes the nutrients in the flour more bioavailable and helps reduce those anti-nutrients, if that makes sense. Right, yeah. I have a lot of starters here. I put mine in bowls. You can put them in jars. A lot of people use weck jars. It does best in glass. If I make tortilla dough, I raise it in my KitchenAid bowl that's metal, but you mostly want to use glass or plastic. You can use plastic, but glass is ideal. Most non-toxic. Yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. So I would not use metal though, if you can. Baking it is fine, raising it in metal is fine, but for me, keeping my start, I want to keep it in glass. And with this start that you have here, you actually got a start from somebody else to start this one, right? I did, yes. Okay. This is originally actually from you when you started your she did sourdough a while ago, long time ago. Yeah, and I actually learned it from her a little bit, and then you left on your mission. Yeah, and I took her start and then started diving into the sourdough world. And I got that start from Ballerina Farmer, and it's the most amazing start. It came alive, reactivated, I guess, super quickly, really fast. So yeah, absolutely love that. And so if somebody doesn't want to buy a starter from somebody else, but they want to start their own, what are kind of the steps to do that? Just heads up, it's a process. Right. It takes about a week depending on your flour, your water, and temperature. So first what you're gonna do is you're just gonna add equal parts of flour and water together, mix it all up, set it on the counter, and then next day take half of it out, feed it. So put equal parts of water, and so you take 1 to 1 to 1 ratio, yes. And then you're going to repeat that process for about a week, and then eventually those yeast and those bacteria will start to take hold, and then you'll eventually have a starter. I've personally never done it. I've watched videos on it. If you find that process isn't working for you, there's a lot of videos out there. How susceptible are sourdough starters to bad germs or bad bacteria? If it's a really strong starter, it will overpower any bad bacteria. Oh, okay. What most likely would kill a sourdough starter is bad bacteria getting in there, or chemicals like chlorine or something from water, right? Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's basically it. It can grow mold sometimes, but if you're changing it out or if you're feeding it every day, yes, it's probably not gonna happen. Yeah, I would guess. And I'll go over, if there's a week's time you're not gonna use your start, I'll go over what you can do for that. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay. So the basic things for a start, you're going to need either a start itself that has all of the bacteria and yeasts and stuff, the good stuff, a spoon or a spatula to mix the starter. I like to use the same one for my starter. This is only for sourdough. Yes, it doesn't touch anything else. And you can use a silicone spatula, you can use a plastic one, you can use a wooden one. It doesn't even have to look like this. I just find that is aesthetically pleasing. Yes, it is. It just makes you want to stir that sourdough. Yeah. So, and then a glass jar. You can use canning jars, you can use bowls, you can use little glass jars, you can use weck jars. You want to make sure you have enough room for it to grow. Yes. How much does it grow? It usually doubles. Doubles? Okay. Yeah, depending on how much you feed it, what ratios you do. If that makes sense. Right. I need to go buy some. But I usually have the gallon jars. I usually have my start in that.
because I use it so much that I need so much.
Right.
Like that's why I have it in a bowl right now instead of
And what kind of things do you generally make out of sourdough?
Everything that involves flour. So noodles and tortillas, rolls, hoagie rolls, sandwich bread, artesian bread,
Pizza dough.
pizza dough. That's every Monday I make pizza, sourdough pizza.
It's amazing. It's so good.
I've made burger buns, hot dog buns. So basically everything. Cookies. I've made brownies. And then you're gonna want filtered water. Filtered or spring water. I haven't tried distilled, but I would assume because there's no minerals and stuff in it, I don't know how the sourdough starter would react to that. But you can use filtered, or spring water. It's crucial that there's no chlorine because chlorine will kill your start. There are some people who have found that their start works with that. There are some who there are 0 bubbles, period. Like none.
Just not growing.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be warm or cold. It can be either. Warm, it will ferment faster. Cold, it will ferment slower. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then flour, I use this from Costco for all of the things that I make. You can use freshly milled, which is the most ideal. It's like you mill it right before you use it. That's the most nutrient dense that you can use. Right. I only use this because it provides like chewier tortillas. My bread has more volume, like my artesian loaves have more volume. The rolls are softer and airier.
So it just kind of gives you better results.
Exactly, yes. But it is not as nutrient dense. However, using sourdough with this, you're still getting good benefits, but not as much as you would with freshly milled flour.
So could you like use this just for your sourdough starter and then use freshly milled as your actual, like when you start making bread and everything, and you start adding flour, you can use a different flour?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. You can even use freshly milled for your start. Okay. One thing about freshly milled is it will ferment like 2 to 3 times faster than white flour will. I think because those yeast and bacteria love the nutrients that are in anything. So
makes sense.
In the freshly milled flour, you can use freshly milled flour or just wheat flour, not just freshly milled, like wheat,
kamut,
spelt, I think emmet, einkorn. Einkorn, yes. That is like, if you are gluten intolerant, a lot of people can eat einkorn flour and einkorn.
That's fermented, like sourdough einkorn, or just like they can
just einkorn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But if you do fermented einkorn,
that much better.
Yeah. That's like top notch. If you can get organic, regeneratively grown, local einkorn that you do sourdough with, like
that's the top notch stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I've used all-purpose flour for everything. Also, you can do half and half. So like my tortillas, I will do half and half. The same with my artesian bread, with my rolls, I usually will do half and half for the benefits of each of them. So like freshly milled for nutrients, white for appearance, show, texture, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Every recipe that I've done so far, you can do half and half and it works great. Well, now I can teach you how to feed a start or how to take care of it, what's crucial. A lot of people assume that sourdough and like your starter is so like high maintenance, it's difficult, like it's like you have to be precise in every single thing that you do, and it's so finicky and like
it's not flexible.
Yes. When in reality it's not. It's completely, it is very, very forgiving. I have gone 5 days without feeding my start, and yes, it threw a fit. It took a couple days for it to come back, but eventually it came back. But it's very forgiving. Like a lot of sourdough recipes are very forgiving. Your recipes, like your rolls, you kind of have to keep an eye on. Your artesian bread. But anyways, we'll go over that maybe in a later video or whatever works. Okay, so what you're gonna do, oh, I forgot, you need a scale you don't need a scale, but if you want the same results every time, I would use a scale.
Because some people, they'll use just like measuring cups or things,
yes,
right? But
yes.
You go by the gram or the ounce?
Gram.
You go by the gram.
Yes. The majority, if not all, sourdough recipes are in grams. They're going to be in grams. Some of them will have like 300 grams here, and then like how many cups that is.
Right.
So
well, that's because you want to do like, especially when you're feeding your start, you do like one part, and like 1 cup of flour is gonna be less grams than 1 cup of water.
Exactly.
Right.
If you are doing measuring cups, I would go off of texture or like consistency of the batter or of your starter. That will usually tell you, that'll get you a good thing. So I'm gonna set my scale to grams. I'm gonna put my jar on, and then I'm going to tare it. So now I know the exact weight of what I'm putting in the jar instead of the weight of the jar included in the weight of the start. So I have my jar tared out. I'm going to do, for the recipe that I use for my bread, I want to have at least 100 to 110 grams of each, of flour, starter, and then water. That makes sense. So I'm gonna put, oops, it's all over the place. Haha. Okay, so now I made a mess, but it's fine. Sourdough's messy. So I have 125 grams of starter, and then I'm going to do 125 grams of filtered water. This is just from our Berkey water filter. So 125 grams. Okay, so right now I did 129 grams, but like I said, it's flexible. It does not need to be absolute. It can be,
maybe if it's like, you think if it's like 10 grams off, you might want to adjust that, or
nah,
because that's only 4 grams off, right? So
yeah, it's not much.
Okay.
I say if it's like 50 grams, I'd probably change it. Yes, I dump some out, whatever, and then so I tear it out again. Oh, I forgot to say that after you put your starter in, then you tear it. So then you're weighing.
So you're tearing after you add each thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then I mix it, and I find that if I mix the starter and the water together before I add the flour, it's
more thorough. Mixes a lot.
Yes.
Better.
Yes, like a lot better.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to mix flour with water and then it's all clumpy and
it
nasty.
sucks. So you said that using warm water versus cold water is better for, like, your starter will ferment quicker if it's warm water.
Yes.
Will it mix better if it's warm water too? Or does it really matter?
To me, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I will say make sure that it's like warm water and not hot, because I think if it's over 120 or something degrees, like if the water is, it will kill your start.
Okay.
You're basically cooking it at that point. So I would do it so it's like a little bit warmer than room temperature. Like if you can hold your finger in it and you're like, oh, that's a little colder than my bath water, then that's great. So now I'm going to, now that that's all mixed, I'm going to grab my cup and put my flour in it. You can do like your 1:1:1 ratio, but if you have a little bit more flour or you put too much water in, as long as your flour and your water are equal, you should be fine. I will say the more water and flour that you have than start, it's going to ferment a little slower because there's more food for those yeast. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to mix that. We're done with that. And it's okay if it gets messy.
So what kind of consistency are you looking for when it comes to mixing your sourdough starter, making your sourdough?
I would say thicker than pancake batter. So consistency that I'm looking for is like this.
Okay.
I don't know how you want to describe that.
I love how glutinous it is.
Glutinous.
Yeah. Kind of just like bounces back.
So I just scrape off the excess on my spoon spatula. You can use a metal stir stick, like a spoon or whatever. That's fine as long as it's not sticking in the start. Okay, so now this is fed, and you can put, so this is my other start that is currently fermenting. I like to use these wet jar lids to put on top because it allows air to escape, but then also it can breathe. You can use just like a mason jar lid and set it on top. You do not want to seal it because as it's fermenting, it's releasing gases. It just might explode. And they can't breathe, so they need air. Mason jar lid, use this. I put a bowl on top. You could do a plate. You could do a paper towel. Some people use like coffee filters with a rubber band, cheesecloth, just something so that it doesn't completely dry out, but also stuff doesn't get inside.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So,
and then where do you want to store it?
You want to store it, depends on how soon you want your start. So,
okay. So like you had yours in the oven.
I did. You can stick it in, if you need it sooner, you need it to ferment sooner, then I put it in the oven with the oven light on. Do not turn the oven on.
Right.
Or something that you can do if you need it really fast, like within 4 or 5 hours, what you can do is turn your oven on the lowest setting, 170, let it warm up a little bit, turn it off, and then stick your jar inside. Either with the door open, door closed, depending on if you feel like it's too hot, then I would leave the door open. So that's one way that you can do that. But normally I just make sure I have enough time before I need it. Majority of the time I will feed it before I go to bed, and by morning time, it's ready. Ready to go, bubbly, happy, fermented, yeah.
So what do you really want it to look like? Because we're looking at this one here, and it's got quite a few bubbles.
Yes.
But it generally gets a lot bigger than that, doesn't it?
It does. So like mine was like right here when I fed it, and right now it's here, and I know it's going to grow to probably the top of the jar.
Okay. And do you want to see like big bubbles?
Yes, you want to
and
see
little bubbles, just like tons of bubbles.
Yes, yes. Bubbles. If there's bubbles in sourdough starter, it's alive. It's still alive. If you see 0 bubbles, it might be gone.
But you see 0 bubbles after like day after day.
Yeah.
Right? Because you might be able to revive it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's day after day after day,
and there's nothing, yes, it's probably gone. You're probably gonna need a new one.
And then another question, I know a lot of the time sourdough starts will have like a liquid, like a brown liquid on the top. That's called the hooch, isn't it?
Yes.
So what does that mean when you have the brown liquid on the top? Because some people, if they try it for the first time, they might get that, right? And they might be like, what the heck is this on the top?
It's
kind of
dead.
gross. What do you do with that? Do you pour it out? Do you mix it in?
I just pour it out, because if you mix it in, it's gonna make things a little more sour. And don't get me wrong, I love my sourdough, but I do not like it super sour.
Okay.
Like, I have a really hard time eating super sour sourdough. Especially if it's over fermented, it will be super sour. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just pour the hooch off. If there's hooch, you're okay. It's not dead. I would just pour off the hooch and then feed it like normal. Something about pouring off sourdough, do not pour it down the sink, because that stuff hardens like cement. It sucks. So either pour it in the trash can, or something that I do is I water it down like a lot. And I haven't had any issues with that. But please, if you want to be safe, just throw it in the trash can, give it to your chickens. I've seen people do that. One way that you can tell that your starter is ready to go is, it's called the float test. You can take like 2 tablespoons, maybe even a tablespoon, like a spoonful, and put it in water, like a bowl of water. And if it floats, it's ready to go. If it like kind of sinks, kind of floats, it needs more time. If it sinks, you just got flour and water. There's nothing. Another way you can tell is if you look at the top. Another way is if you look at the top, you see a bunch of like a bunch of craters, like bubbles have popped. So like right now you can see bubbles are coming to the surface, but they haven't quite popped yet. So you want it to be at peak, and then it like the bubbles kind of come down a little tiny bit. If you have bubbles all throughout the jar and you saw that it has sunk just like a little tiny bit, it's ready to go. Some people like to use their start like right before the peak for taller bread. I don't know. I haven't done it like that, just because this way has always worked for me.
And then what happens if you over ferment it?
It smells disgusting. It smells like feet. Like my husband will clean some of my sourdough stuff and he's like, what is that smell? And it smells like feet. But that's if you, like if you leave some, like my bowl of start over there, if I left that on the counter for like even 1 more day, it smells awful.
It'd be really strong.
Yes. Also, it will grow mold sometimes. It's funny because I've never had hooch. I've had hooch if I pull it out of the fridge, but mine.
Well, maybe it's because your ratios are correct. Your ratios are right, and then I don't know. Maybe it has to do with the flour too. So if you let it sit for a while, will it keep growing, or at some point it will stop because it doesn't have any more food?
Yes.
Anything else left to eat? Okay.
Yes. All right. So it grows and it reaches its peak, and then it starts to sink. And then if it has a bunch of bubbles and it's reached its peak, and if it's sunk down maybe even an inch, but you still have a ton of bubbles, it's considered fed. And you can use that for any fed starter recipes, if you are using a recipe or anything that needs like raising, I would use it at its peak. I would try to do it as close to the peak as possible. But if it's there, so like say you fed it, it came up, it fell down, there's little tiny bubbles, that's considered unfed. Or some people call it discard. There's kind of like confusion with discard. How I describe it, when it says like sourdough discard, to me that's just unfed starter.
Yeah.
So like if I feed it the night before and I let it go, and the next night say I want to make like a discard recipe, cool, I can use that because I fed it the night before. And so it's unfed. It's still good, it's not dead, but it's just unfed.
I heard that if your start is struggling, you can maybe put like a little bit of sugar in it and it'll kind of kickstart it. Would you recommend that?
I've never done it, so I can't say that I recommend it.
Okay.
I know some people use baking soda. Well, they'll throw a little bit of baking soda in there. I've never tried that. If you want to kickstart or like have a really strong starter, I would use freshly milled. I love that stuff, like I said before. You can always give it a little bit more flour and that will make it really strong too. And just because it has a lot of bubbles does not mean that it's a really strong start. It's alive and you can use it, but the stronger your start, the more airy, more rise you'll get in your bread rolls.
And probably the more glutinous it is. I don't know, if you're making pizza dough or something, it stays together, right?
Yeah,
like
it helps with blend development.
Yeah,
Yes. So say you want to make a recipe, so say like bread. The recipe that I use 200 grams of active fed starter. Another name for fed starter is active. Active is tons of bubbles, peak, super ready to go stuff. So what I do is I get my flour and my water mixed together, autolyze, which we'll do a different video for, just the bread. At 8 a.m., I will feed my start, stick it somewhere warm so that I'm guaranteed to have a ready starter by, say, noon, 1 or 2. The latest I start the bread is 2. But anyways, so my starter's all bubbly, ready to go. I mix my flour and my water, let it autolyze for 30 minutes, and then I'll just take my start and I will pour 200 grams in on top of my bread and water mixture, flour and water mixture. Then like the leftover stuff, I'll just set aside and I will use that as my start and feed that again, and then I have a starter.
Okay.
What a lot of people will do, I do it differently. What a lot of people will do is, okay, I have an active starter, I'm gonna take out 2 or 3 tablespoons, put it in a different jar, feed that, and now that's my start. And they consider what's left after that discard. But it still could be active discard. A lot of recipes that say discard, you want unfed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why I do it the way that I do, because it helps me understand, okay, so I just pour out what I need and then what's left is my start. It's a little more risky because there are times when I've had to do a little bit less starter than I needed so that I have enough to start my other starter to feed, to have another starter. Does that make sense? Yeah. To me, that makes more sense, where I pour out what I need and then whatever's left is going to be my start. So it would be good to feed it whenever you need a recipe. So like for me, I feed it like every night before I go to bed, because I know I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna make tortillas, or I'm gonna make rolls, or I'm gonna make whatever. So I feed it daily, sometimes every other day, depending on how I'm feeling. If I don't care to make sourdough that day, because sometimes I don't feel like it, it is what it is. If you know you're not going to use it within the next few days, I would feed it and put it in the fridge, instead of just letting it ferment on your counter, because it might mold, it will create hooch, and it will stink because it's ferment. Okay, so you've made your bread, whatever. Oh no, you're going out of town for a week, what do I do? What you do is you give it a good feeding. You can give it extra flour, so like 2-3 more tablespoons or like 20 more grams of flour. Feed it, throw it in the back of the fridge, and it'll stay like that for like a month.
So you freeze it too, because I know some people freeze their sourdough start.
Yes,
freeze it?
I know people will freeze their discard for recipes, because people will have like loads and loads and loads of
and they don't want to waste it.
Yeah, exactly. But I will feed my start and use enough of it so that I don't have waste. And if I find, like, I have this whole bowl of discard now and that's unfed and it needs to be used or it's gonna start stinking, I'm going to make pizza dough today. The recipe that I use uses purely discard. You can use active with it or discard, but I have all that so I can use it. You can make pancakes, you can make waffles, you can make like Navajo taco scones. There's a lot of recipes you can use discard for. Once you get the hang of sourdough, it comes easy. Once you
kind of like second nature.
Exactly. Yes. You like don't even think about it. Oh, I gotta start rolls. Cool. So in the morning I whip them up, I set them on my counter, and then at like 2 or 3, shape them, let them raise, bake them just like regular rolls. It is a little more time consuming, but I have been able to work my schedule around it. That makes sense.
And real quick, your sourdough starter, the success of that could also depend upon the altitude at which you live, right?
Yes.
So like we are in Idaho, and so we're at a pretty high altitude. We are not at sea level whatsoever. And so it might be a little different. You're probably gonna want to educate yourself a little bit more about doing sourdough in the area that you live in. Because I tried to do sourdough when I was living in Europe. We were at sea level, and it did not work very well because I was doing it in the way that I would do it before I went to Europe. It wasn't working, and my sourdough start, it just would not get big. It would not grow. It maybe grew maybe a third of what it was. So
I found that higher the altitude, the faster it ferments.
Okay.
The lower, so like I was in California back in January, and I tried to make some rolls and they just would not raise. I don't know what was going on. So I found that my rolls just would not raise, and I don't know, I assumed that it was because of the altitude.
Yeah.
It was just lower, and like they fermented, but they didn't raise.
Weird.
It was really weird, and they were disgusting because I still baked them. I was like, I'm not gonna waste these. No, they were gross. Nobody ate them. So anyways, I can do some research, and the next video that we do on sourdough, I can kind of go over that and kind of clarify.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
If that is something that your people are interested in.
Yeah, cool. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment them down below. If you want a separate video of Aubrey showing you how to make artisanal sourdough loaves, then like this video or comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe also. But yeah, thank you, Aubrey, so much for showing us how to start our own sourdough starter, or just keep it up and take care of it. So
yeah, you're welcome. I love it. Like, I genuinely enjoy doing it, not just because it's healthier for my family, but to me it's a creative outlet.
All right, well, thank you for watching this video. Hope you learned something and this helped you out a lot. So yeah, have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.